This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
In and out for many years now, and so they were a natural choice for me to co-host with here at O'Brien's Bookshop. I'm so grateful to have all of you with me as we discuss this unbelievable case. This is the case that, as I travel around Texas and the country, that I'm asked about the most. Everyone always wants to know what happened to Missy Bevers and who is responsible for her death. So we're going to go into, what we know that's going on in the investigation now, new theories, new leads. But before we do that, we want to kind of get everyone up to speed and dial back the clock about 10 years and talk about what happened to Missy as far as we know and the timeline of events. So it was April 18th, 2016, when Missy Bevers was up early to teach a fitness class at Creekside Church. Many of you probably passed by that church. I know I did when I was driving here just today. And she was setting up very early in the morning for a Camp Gladiator fitness class. We are coming up on the 10th anniversary of this murder, which is really hard to believe considering how much information initially came out in the case. I think we all believed that this case would be solved in those early days, but sadly, we are still sifting through a lot of the same information that they released in the very early days of the investigation. So I would love for Crystal and Renae to share how they got involved and, what their early impressions were of the case back in 2016.
Renae has a better story than I do, but I'll start off with I got involved because I saw it on the news, like probably the rest of you did. And I grew up in DeSoto, Texas, which is not far from Midlothian. A lot of friends in Midlothian back in high school and now. And it caught my eye to see something crazy happen in such a nice little town like Midlothian. So I stopped and watched the TV that morning, the morning of the murder. And they said a woman got murdered in a church. And it just, what? I just kept watching and listening, and I realized after they started releasing more and more information that she's exactly my age. Her 3 children are exactly the same age as my kids. I just became obsessed. And then I got to meet Renae, and the Facebook groups that form for everything now. Back then they weren't as common, but they started forming all these groups about Missy's murder. And I was quick to join those to see if we could learn something that wasn't in the news. And that's where I met Renae.
Yeah. So like she said, we joined the groups. I was the same way. I saw it on the news. I was baffled by this murder in a small town that was minutes from my house. And I actually knew Missy. I worked with her in 2013, 2014. Went to her house every day once a week for an entire year. And so my whole family had met her, and I was just in shock that some woman could go into a church and get murdered, and it just something you don't hear. So like she said, the group started very quickly, and didn't even know what a group was back then, and joined it to see what was going on. And that's where me and her met. We were both in there, and we just started talking about the case, and it just became an obsession. We got to know each other over the years, and we just felt like we had done so much research. Let's start a podcast. So.
And we didn't think we were signing up for 10 years of this, and I don't think anyone else did. We were just really interested and thought it would be solved pretty quickly. Yeah. You've got the perpetrator on camera for 28 minutes walking around the church. Yes, they're covered, but we still thought that was something to go on.
You would think that would be enough, right? And back in 2016, I was a producer for 48 Hours on CBS News. I was working on the weekly true crime show that came out on Saturday nights. And so this was one of the cases that I was following like Crystal and Renae, thinking, well, this is going to be solved any day and we'll be able to do an episode and cover everything. So I better start collecting all the information now and figuring out who we'll interview. And I have, look back on my computer, and the files that I have go all the way back to the day, that Missy was discovered. And it continued to be one of those stories that I would always follow up with on the anniversary. I actually filmed an anniversary story over at the church and talked to Brandon, Missy's husband, and her children at their home. They were so kind to invite me in, and a producer. And, we worked on this story that never aired on CBS News, just because of the news cycle. And they were going to do an Unsolved edition of it for an anniversary, but it got bumped for like breaking news at the time. And then they never picked it back up. And Brandon was so gracious about it when I explained, oh, I'm so sorry, but it's news, and something happened with politics or whatever it might have been at the time. And they bumped the story, but it stayed close to my heart. And I knew that it was one of the ones that I had to look at more. And as people continue to ask me about it, I wanted to be able to give them as much information as I could. And so let's talk about the actual timeline of this murder. So it's very early morning hours. If you know anything about murder, it usually happens under the cover of darkness, right? But this is 4:30 in the morning when Missy arrives at the church. So she's preparing for Camp Gladiator fitness class, and she's brought her cones and her exercise bands and weights and all the things that people use to do these fitness classes. And she's there to set up for a 5 a.m. class. But when she gets there, there's actually somebody else already in the building. And that person, is captured on surveillance footage. Do you guys want to talk about what happens before Missy ever arrives?
That person broke in, and they first appear, I say they just to be gender neutral.
Sure.
We don't really know for sure if it's a man or a woman. So they arrive we don't know what time they arrive, but they show up on the camera at 3:50. So 3:50. That's the first proof we have that person is in the building. And it's just terrifying. It's like a horror movie, thinking that you're walking into a dark building and you're alone and it's raining. So eerie for Missy. But then we've talked about over the years, Renae and I just get so angry thinking about how terrified she must have been when she realized she wasn't alone.
Yeah.
And realized that person was there to do her harm.
And we've also talked about how we would have ran out of there in seconds. I mean, I can't imagine. She was super brave, like walking into a church and in the darkness and hearing noises, being alone.
And not to mention the forensic podiatrist that worked on this case, he said that he has seen more of the video than the public has. They let him see a lot more. Because they didn't, out of respect for the family, the police said, we're not releasing any footage of Missy walking in. But he saw it, the forensic podiatrist. And he said when Missy walks in, she jerks her head. So you can tell she hears something. That's what Renae always, and I always say, we would have been out of there.
Yeah.
But Missy was brave. She walked down the hall toward the noise. We don't know if she heard a shoe squeak. We don't know if she heard someone say, hey, Missy. We have no idea what she heard, but she heard something and she went toward the noise.
And the reason why she was having this class in the church to begin with was because of the weather. So she was a dedicated fitness instructor, and normally they would train outside. But she had sent out a notice to all of her Camp Gladiator clients that they, even if it's raining, we're still training, right? And that they were going to be indoors for this particular workout. And so that notification went out overnight. So they had just a small amount of notice that this is what was going on, because they make the decision based on the weather. They prefer to be outdoors, but they have these alternate locations should, weather require them to go inside. So the idea that this is a targeted attack, of course, is what has really taken hold. But there's another theory, potentially, that the church was the target, and Missy just happened to change her plans and ended up in the church on a Monday morning at 4 or 5 a.m. when normally most people wouldn't be in this church. So lots to consider in this case that has gone unsolved for so long. You think the natural theories, were they true, they'd already solved the case. There's a lot of logic to that if the traditional true crime narrative was applicable here, we wouldn't be talking about an unsolved case. We'd be talking about, here's who did it. They got caught. They went to jail. They've been on trial. They've been convicted. But here we are still wondering, puzzling, scratching our heads. Who could this person be? So let's talk about what happens next. So early arrivals to the class discover Missy's body, and they call 911, as anyone would. Those calls have not been released because the case is still unsolved. It's an active investigation, and it's very normal for the 911 call to not be released until there's an arrest made. And I will just tell you that in 1/3 of all murders, the person who calls 911 is the killer. I don't think there's any chance that that's the case here, but just statistically, that usually gets a surprise from the crowd, because it is surprising. But 1/3 of the time, the person calling 911 actually committed the crime, and they believe by reporting it, they will, be absolved. They won't be a suspect. But actually, if you call 911, spoiler alert, you're the first suspect.
Yeah.
So for authorities, you're the first suspect because you're on the scene before anyone else, right? How are you there? Why are you there? What do you know? What could you potentially have done before you called 911? And when it ends up being the killer who called 911, they have usually staged the scene in some way. And they think that they're smarter than the cops and smarter than, the FBI and everybody else. And that by calling 911, they're going to control the narrative. So that's something that always has to be taken into consideration when you have a 911 call. You don't always have one. Sometimes the body's discovered by law enforcement, right? But in this case, it was just the people in her class. And so Camp Gladiator goes under a microscope for this murder. There's actually a couple of podcasters that I work with on Rogue Media Network that have a show called Bloody Happy Hour that were Camp Gladiator instructors, and they also knew Missy. So it's just a small world in Texas true crime, right? And there's so many connections. And so after this 911 call, of course, Midlothian police arrive at the scene and they start combing for evidence. And thankfully, they find that the building has video surveillance. I will tell you so many times, these buildings where murders occur, homes where murders occur, they have cameras, but they're not working. They have cameras, but the service has been canceled, right? Nancy Guthrie, anyone? It happens, right? Sometimes they can recover it if all the resources are dedicated to that case. But many times the cameras just aren't even, there's no tape. They're not turned on. They're just there for aesthetics. And so we really are fortunate. You don't get to use that word a lot in this case, but the fact that there are actually working cameras in a church, it's pretty amazing, because most of the time they're just there for show and they don't actually keep the systems up. So that's always been interesting to me. And I have heard previously that the church had some security issues. And so they were working to make sure their cameras were on and that they were keeping their footage. So that kind of makes my eyebrows go up and think, well, how many churches have security issues and need to have, fully functioning security equipment? Could that be a clue here, right? But let's talk about, in addition to these security cameras that are inside the building, there's also footage from outside the building. Do y'all want to talk about what is captured outside the building?
The Nissan Altima? About half a mile.
We've talked about this case just a few times. Yeah.
The Nissan Altima was at a gun store, and you'll know this because you're local, SWFA. Remember that? They're closed now, unfortunately, but they were open in full swing at the time. And they had banks of cameras, and most gun stores do have wonderful security, right?
Amazing
cameras. Amazing high quality cameras. So there was a suspicious vehicle that had driven around the parking lot, and it was a silver, maybe white. They kind of went back and forth on that in the media. Nissan Altima circling. That car, though, was never seen at the church, just to be clear. A lot of people think, oh, that was the perpetrator. We don't have any proof that that car is even involved in this murder, but it was released early on as a person that the police want to talk to, because they could have seen something, or they could be the perp, you know.
Right.
It was just, it was the only thing I think they had to go on early on that they were telling the public as far as cars go.
Yeah, they released that footage. If you remember it, it's very grainy because it's raining hard outside. And so this car circles in the parking lot. The rain prevents you from being able to see the license plate, to be able to read it. And there's some type of oval sticker on the back, a bumper sticker. They're clues to what this vehicle might be and who it might belong to. But as far as I know, it's never been identified who was driving that car. Yeah. And so that creates a lot of questions, because let's say you're out, you're driving, late at night, you're driving back from a friend's house or a family's house, or you work nights, and it's raining so hard you can't see. And so you pull into a parking lot because you just want to wait for a break in the rain. Like, I've done it, right? Crazy flash floods in Texas. Just pull off the road so you don't have someone crazy hit you, right? You just want to wait for things to calm down. Totally innocent reason to pull over. But considering all the coverage, it really seems like if anyone who was from around here had pulled in and then they saw, oh my gosh, they think my car has something to do with the murder of Missy Bevers, I better call them and say, hey, I was working late. I worked the night shift. I drove here. You can come see my car. I don't have anything to do with this. And you can check this off your list, because this is still a very robust lead for law enforcement and hasn't been able to be eliminated. And so people wonder, well, does the person have something to hide in this car? Do they not want their name associated with the investigation? Are they trying to lay low? That's obviously like the nefarious reason why that car could have been there. I think possibly like a third possibility is this person isn't local to the area. Yes. They were driving through, right? They are on some kind of long haul road trip, or what, it's not like a trucker, right? It's a Nissan Altima. So they're on some kind of trip. They're not from here. They pull off in the rain. They wait for the break. They keep driving, and they don't follow the news. So they don't know that their car is all over the news, right? I mean, there are people who just do not follow the news. And, I teach journalism classes at Baylor. Some of my students do not follow the news. So they don't always know what's going on. And they might not know that their car has been the subject of a decade of speculation. So you would hope, if you're listening and you drive a Nissan Altima, were you in Midlothian on April 18th, right?
Well, and also if they weren't local, the national media wasn't hitting the Altima as hard as the local media was. So maybe that's part of it. Hard to say.
Yeah, it's just one of those, another mystery. Yeah, a really good lead that went nowhere. And they continue to bring up this footage. They've tried to enhance it multiple times. Unfortunately, it's not CSI. They can't pull that license plate out of thin air. It would be great if they could. But the rain is actually a really incredible challenge to so many criminal investigations. Just water in general, right? If you put a body in water, so much of the evidence goes away, right? Especially fast-moving water. And then rain really wreaks havoc on cameras across the board. So lucky or unlucky, however you want to call it, this has led to a complete dead end in terms of the investigative efforts. They have the evidence. They have this potential person of interest car, but to this day, as far as we know, no one's ever been identified. And then Renae talked about the broken window at the church. That's really the only other piece of really physical evidence that kind of helps create somewhat of a picture of what could have been going on that night. I know I've talked with Crystal and Renae previously about our theories about this broken window and the idea that the person who wanted to break into the church was testing the security system. So this happens, not infrequently in crimes that are really planned, thought out, where a criminal will go to a location and attempt to trip an alarm to see if anybody shows up. So let's play this theory out. They break a window and then they drive their Nissan Altima across the street and they wait and they watch to see, does anybody show up? Do sirens come? Does an unmarked car come? And they wait because it's 3:50 a.m. right?
Timing is pretty close together too. Pretty close.
So that's one theory. And it matches up with why this person in the Nissan Altima would never come forward, right? Because they could have been the person who, we end up seeing on surveillance. So I think now we'll play the surveillance video. We have it queued up for you guys. And this is just a 2-minute clip, but this is the footage that the Midlothian Police Department released as part of their efforts to get information from the public. So as you see, this is the suspect on camera wearing full police SWAT gear attire, not an authorized member of law enforcement to be at this church, to be at this location, but dressed head to toe in tactical gear. This is someone who has completely obscured their identity to the point where we actually don't know their race. We don't know their gender. They have used, authorities have used different technology to try to estimate what the height of this person is based on where they hit different door frames and other physical markers in the building. And so they've estimated their height at fairly short, like 5'2" to 5'7", which has created a lot of speculation that the killer could be a woman because 5'6" is the average height for a woman. So the idea that it could be a man, but he's shorter than average. 5'8" is an average height for a man. So it is interesting. You can see at times like a lighter complexion. So it does appear that the person's probably Caucasian, but there's really no clear indication there's really, it's very, very little to narrow down what other characteristics this person has. I'm curious, Crystal, Renae, what stands out to you from this footage?
Early on, the police had used male pronouns when they talked about this perpetrator. Just a few days later, I remember Kevin Johnson from Midlothian Police, he corrected the pronouns. He said, we're not so sure it's a he anymore. We're going to say it could be a woman, because they said, quote, we see a feminine sway. Yeah. And I agree with that. You do see some feminine movements from the perpetrator if you watch all the video that's been released. So that's kind of what jumps out at me.
I would have to say the part where the perpetrator is standing facing the door, they turn around and they start adjusting some of their stuff or maybe putting some tools back in their vest. And at that point, they turn around and they kind of pop their hip. I feel like that is the female.
Yeah.
I tend to think there's more than one there. But that's the female part of it that I see.
Interesting. Yeah, there are countless people millions of people who have viewed this YouTube video, and there are additional videos from Midlothian Police, from the FBI, from other people who have posted various clips online. So this clip has not wanted for attention, right? But everyone is still trying to understand what they're looking at. And whenever I spoke to Brandon, Missy's husband, about the fact that I was doing this live podcast and, let him know and just got his approval for us to do this show here in Midlothian, he brought up something very interesting where he talked about how the killer doesn't look rushed. The killer doesn't look like they have a real agenda. They're very lackadaisical, nonchalant. And the idea that they're not expecting necessarily someone to come up from behind the corner or another door that they're going to then kill. If you would think, especially, someone dressed in this police gear, you'd think that they knew what they were doing, right? That they would be lying in wait, that they would be in like a strategic position. They would be like in a strike position, but they're not. And so the idea really also takes hold that maybe this person didn't intend to kill Missy or anyone that night, maybe what they were doing at the church had nothing to do with her. But once she arrived, then the person was in this like fight or flight mode and attacked her for some reason. I know a lot of people believe that it's a targeted attack, and I certainly am open to that theory, to the idea that they wanted to kill specifically Missy. And, you know, we all have skeletons in our closet. God forbid anyone's cell phone here tonight one day becomes evidence in a criminal trial or subject to a search warrant, because, you know, we've all talked to people and done things and seen things that we probably wouldn't like to be public. But if you end up dead, you have no privacy, right? So everything you've ever done, everything you've ever said, everything you've ever texted could end up in court one day. Let that inform your text history. So it's really, you know, where police started, right? They started looking at persons of interest in Missy's case. And all police work starts with the closest contacts. So they started with her husband, Brandon. And I'm sure if you followed this case at all, you're aware that Brandon was out of state in Mississippi on a fishing trip, right? And he has hotel receipts and he has credit card receipts and he has people that were with him. And he has a very thorough paper trail. Not only that, this was a regular fishing trip that he took. So there's just a lot that insulates him from being a strong suspect in this case. But like anyone else close to Missy, he was one of the target numbers, as Midlothian police called it. So they had 8 target numbers, 8 people that were identified as the most frequent contacts in Missy's phone. So it was her husband. It was actually her father-in-law, Randy Bevers, and it was also some other friends and fellow Camp Gladiator members and their spouses. So it ended up being 8 people who were wrapped up in this initial target number search. And the media had a field day with 8 suspects, right? That's what they ended up being called.
So did the Facebook groups.
Yes.
Very true.
So those names were thoroughly searched, thoroughly deep dived on Reddit and social media, and through traditional means. You know, law enforcement served search warrants on all of their cell phones, on many of their homes and personal property. They were looked at very intensely. And, you know, as we sit here today, none of those 8 people have been charged with a crime. They've never been taken to a grand jury. They've never been indicted, arrested. But their names, I mean, I'm not naming them today, but their names are everywhere, right? Their LinkedIn histories got pulled up. You know, it's just wild. And part of that is just investigation 101. But in this digital world that we live in, everyone has their real life and their online life. And a lot of times your online life is a lot more accessible than your real life. And so everything that they pretty much ever did online was scrutinized, discussed, debated. Motives were assumed, you know, to different text threads and messages and posts. And it got pretty ugly there. A lot of people thought they solved it, right? Here we are today. But a lot of people thought, well, one of these 8 persons of interest did it. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to blast their name and blast their photos and family photos. And I mean, it was very, very public, the accusations that people made in this case. What stands out to you from that?
To this day, there are TikTok videos straight up naming people and showing their pictures. It's incredible. I wish I could find it right now, but there was a report that came out later where police sort of retracted and felt, I think they saw the effect that releasing this had.
Yeah.
Releasing this to the media, because they kind of walked it back and said, well, we don't think anyone on that target list is a suspect. So
yeah.
I kind of was thinking, then why did you release it? Because everyone went crazy with it. So
they did.
Just more confusion about this case. We really don't have any clear-cut information on this case.
I remember just going to the press conferences that they would give on the steps of the Midlothian Police Department, and they were swarmed by local media, national media, and just anyone who happened to catch wind that there was a press release or a press conference. Because, by the way, those are just open to the public. You don't have to be a credentialed member of the media 99% of the time. If you find out that there's a press conference, especially if it's outdoors, you're just free to attend. If it's held, behind closed doors and you have to have a credential, that's a little different. But in this case, they were just talking about it on the steps of the Midlothian Police Department. And so people were showing up and they wanted to give information. They felt like they needed to show that they really were working this case. In my opinion, that's why they released the 8 numbers, where normally they might hold that close to the vest, but they actually released them and allowed the public to see what they were doing almost in real time in the investigation. I've worked with a lot of different law enforcement agencies as a journalist, and their media policies can be all over the map. Most of the time, law enforcement is very tight-lipped about cases until they're solved. And then, once they go to trial, they're very happy to open up and talk about them and talk about their investigative efforts and how they paid off. But a lot of the work, for good reason, goes on behind closed doors. And the integrity of the investigation kind of requires that secrecy, right? There's always holdback information that only the killer would know. And so the more that investigators talk to media and other people, in some ways, the more risks that there are that they might reveal some information that shouldn't be public. And so a lot of times they just say, we're not going to talk about this case. It's open and active. And they just kind of give the bare bones information. Midlothian Police Department did not do that. They actually gave a lot of information out. It almost seemed like they were deputizing the public to go try to help them dig up information on these 8 target numbers. But hundreds of tips started coming in to the hotline that they'd established. They brought in the Texas Rangers. They brought in the FBI. Everybody wanted to know what was going on and who might be responsible. And they were taking information from anyone who had a tip. And one of those tips seemed really promising at the time. It was about a bloody shirt that had been taken to a dry cleaner in Midlothian and needed to be cleaned. And it just happened to be like a woman's extra large sweatshirt, right? And it was very suspicious whenever the dry cleaner ticket came back to a member of the Bevers family. This made international news, y'all. This was 2016, so you might have to jog your memory. But Crystal and Renae, do you want to talk about who brought in this bloody shirt and what happened next?
Okay, so Brandon's father, Randy Bevers.
Yes.
They had heard that there was some commotion going on about this bloody shirt. So him and his dad go up to the police department to kind of put out this fire. So they're up there and they're, talking to the media, and Randy is answering questions. So apparently they were staying with the daughter, Brandon's sister, and they had a small dog. And then the sister, their daughter, had a dog. Well, apparently the 2 dogs get into a fight, a really bad fight. And the little small one, which is Randy and his wife's dog, gets injured bad.
Yeah.
So I guess they're picking up the dog. They've got it, on their chest, and blood is going to be on their shirt, right? So they, had to take the dog to the vet. The dog dies. So at that point, I guess they just decided to take the shirt into the dry cleaners. And this is what prompted, the dry cleaners to contact authorities and say, hey, we have a bloody shirt over here. And, the last name is Bevers, and we have this murder. So y'all need to come investigate this. A lot of times the story gets really embellished that the shirt was just dripping with blood. It was not like that. It had some blood on it from a small animal, that little dog that got killed. But nevertheless, that's how that happened.
Yeah.
That's how he got pulled into it. And it's kind of just never stopped.
Yeah, people started analyzing Randy Bevers' walk, his gait, his height. It was all anyone wanted to talk about for a while, that, oh my gosh, Missy Bevers' father-in-law fits the profile, right?
And it didn't help that at the end of the press conference, the cameras stayed on Randy. He turns around and kind of waddles into the building. And everyone was like, that's the killer. He walks exactly, he's got that same kind of a limp, you know. And
he wasn't doing himself any favors. And it's not, you know, you can't help the way you walk and the way you look and like your body composition. It just happens to align with a lot of the characteristics of this suspect. But just to put your fears at ease, not only did they check the alibi of Randy Bevers the night that Missy was murdered, but also they tested the blood on the sweatshirt. And it came back as animal blood. It's not human blood. It's not Missy Bevers' blood. It's not any person's blood. It does actually belong to the dog. The Chihuahua story checks out in this case. So as weird as it is, as much as it seems like this has to be related, it's really just another strange, false trail.
And we feel so bad for Randy Bevers and his wife because, you know, his daughter, Christy, was on our show, Brandon's sister, and she went through all the details of the story we just told. And it's just so unfortunate that they flew from Southern California as soon as they heard about Missy's murder. They drop everything, fly, they bring their dog. And then, you know, their daughter-in-law's been brutally murdered just out of the blue. They're at Christy's house. Their dog gets killed. And then Randy takes the sweatshirt in and then and then now everyone thinks he killed Missy. I'm sure he was just thinking, I was trying to be a supportive family member. I should have stayed in California because all of this stuff.
He got wrapped up in it.
It didn't work well for him at all. Yeah. And it's really, really sad.
And to this day, many people believe.
A lot of people say it's the father-in-law.
Right.
Although he does have one thing going in his favor. He's not 5'2", between 5'2" and 5'7". That's so true. There's that.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Quite a bit taller.
So let's talk about the suspect profile, what we do actually know and who this person could be. We've discussed how experts analyzed the footage and they estimate the height between 5'2" and 5'7", gender and race unknown. The particular gait seems to be the biggest clue, and they actually had a forensic podiatrist examine this gait and say, like, does this person have some type of deformity? Do they have some type of like known issue that we can try to narrow down? And have they had some type of foot surgery? Are they, you know, in a walking cast? And so one of the suspects that came up that was looking pretty good for it at one time was Bobby Wayne Henry. So this was a man who had once worked security at Creekside Church of Christ and who volunteered to work security at Missy's funeral. The reason why I'm saying his name, and I'm not saying the names of other people, is twofold. Number one, he had a search warrant executed on his property in December 2016. So he's publicly been named by police as a person of interest in this case. And whenever they went and looked at his property, they actually found tactical gear that matched similar gear that was worn by the killer. And they also found a burn pit that had recently had charred remains. They also found a laptop with child pornography on it that was used to have him, you know, arrested, detained. This guy was very suspicious and had previous sexual assault allegations in his past. He'd been arrested. He'd been fired from another job as law enforcement due to his misconduct. So he was looking pretty good, y'all, as a suspect. But unlike, all the yeses, the check boxes, he's also 6'1". So that's one of those elements that really hasn't squared. He passed away recently, so just you can't slander the dead. So there's no harm in using his name and talking about his actual connection to this case once you pass away. So he's someone that, was interviewed about this case. Law enforcement did hold for a period of time. And I remember talking to someone within the investigation that described Bobby Wayne Henry as Teflon, that everything thrown at him, nothing would stick. And he continued to get off, not just on this case, but other cases. And some people looked at his prior career in law enforcement, which ended due to, his own actions, as possibly, the idea that he was smarter than your average killer and kind of knew what law enforcement would do. He was always my favorite suspect, personally. I thought that the idea that he volunteered to work security at Missy's funeral was one of those like psychopathic traits where they really want to be close to the action, right? And the video of him walking around the parking lot, y'all know what I'm talking about. He has that same gait. And that's not just me saying it. A forensic podiatrist examined his gait and the walk of the killer. And they said that they couldn't find enough, dissimilar things to say it wasn't the same person. Now, the height doesn't match up. So is there a problem with their forensic analysis of the height? Or is this, he fits every box, but not the one that you can't change, which is how tall you are, right? You can't make yourself shorter. You can make yourself taller if you wear, and I've seen this happen in murders where the killer wears lifts in their shoes. And they actually wear like ski socks, really thick socks, to leave a footprint that's 2 sizes larger than their own footprint. Some of these killers are really smart, y'all. And they're thinking about that. So they're 2 inches taller because they got the lifts in their shoes, and their shoe size is 2 sizes bigger than their actual shoe size. This happened in the Eric Williams case in Kaufman County. You guys know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Thankfully, that's not justice pending. He was caught and is now on death row. So we can hope that this story has a similar conclusion one day. But I would love for Crystal and Renae to talk about some of their suspect theories in whatever way they're comfortable discussing it. They have some interesting theories as well.
Bobby Wayne Henry was always my favorite one as well, until I can say this now because we're no longer afraid of him because he's passed away. We used to be afraid of him. We're like, don't say anything in public. But Bobby Wayne Henry was at a PetSmart or a Petco. PetSmart. And she was behind him in line, and she texted me. She goes, he's right in front of me. I was like, what? And so I said, get a picture. So she gets a picture. She sends it to me. And let me tell you, he was huge. And there's all the other regular sized people around. And he wasn't just tall, big, broad shoulders. There's just no way that's the perpetrator in the church. There's just no way.
I also videoed him at Walmart.
This was all top secret until recently.
Like,
so yeah, it still feels so liberating to tell these things.
I was like, we're gonna get this for once and for all.
Yeah.
Well, and my suspect is a female, and she left Midlothian back in 2020 and lives really far north, almost to Canada. And there is probably, we would need about 3 or 4 more days of this event for me to explain why I think it's this person, but that's my person. And she has contacted us. I don't think she likes us very much. So so that's who we think it is. I don't know what the motive is. That's the problem. We can't think of a motive, but I'm sticking with that for now.
A lot of people do believe that the killer is a woman for all the reasons we've discussed. So that, remains a viable theory. I feel like the fact, like I always go back to the final days on Earth, right? That's my bedrock. And the fact that she was, at a Camp Gladiator conference in Austin the weekend before she's killed, and she's killed on a Monday. And Mondays are also like church holidays usually. Got some church folk in the crowd, right? They close on Mondays. Everybody needs a day off, right? So that's kind of their Saturday. Because Sunday's the big show, right? So they got to work Sunday. So Monday's a day off, sometimes Tuesday, but almost always churches are closed on Monday. So that's always stuck with me, that the killer, if they knew anything about churches or that church, they probably knew that no one was going to be there Monday morning. And they might have thought that they were going to be alone to do whatever they were going to do. And the idea that this person was so enraged that they would kill someone who came upon them, rage is a crazy thing. And it doesn't always get meted out to the person that's responsible. Have you ever had like a spouse blow up at you because they had a bad day at work, right? It doesn't have anything to do with you. Their anger is just coming out, right? It's their outlet. So considering that the close circle around Missy has been under such scrutiny for the past decade. And we know that there's a fresh investigation going on right now, starting from the very beginning, looking back over the entire case. There's new agencies involved, and they are really going back through, re-interviewing everyone, seeing if they missed anything. So I'm encouraged because a lot of cold cases don't get that kind of attention 10 years out.
Right.
Any final thoughts here?
I would like to say this, about the thought of it being possibly random, and of course, anything is possible. But a car across the street would be a perfect lookout, so the person wouldn't need to be nervous because somebody's saying, "I'm going to let you know as soon as she pulls in."
So you're thinking group murder. This is you got an accomplice.
At least two.
Okay.
At least two.
Okay.
But yes, that's a possibility that they were the lookout, which would give this person the ability to be at ease because I know somebody's going to notify me as soon as she pulls up.
And I also think, if we're talking about psychopathy, staying cool before you kill someone and after is not uncommon with people who are psychopaths.
Yeah.
So I'm not as bothered by the person just sort of carefree walking around because we don't know that they were carefree. They may look it, but they were probably getting psyched up in their minds to kill Missy. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's a coincidence that person was in the church. That would shock me.
Yeah.
I'm ready to be wrong, but it's pounding rain and you're going to dress up like that, drive over there in the rain in the middle of the night and put on all that gear just to do nothing.
I don't know.
That surprises me.
It's fascinating. No, I don't think they had a do nothing plan. I think they had a plan. I mean, there's been talk that the papers were rifled through, that there were things that had obviously been searched in the church. We don't know. Was this person just killing time until Missy arrived and was a, nosy person and was just looking around? Or did they have something they were actually trying to accomplish? It's one of those, I go back and forth any given day on, my lead theory because I've had so much time to think about it. But I would love to hear comments from y'all, questions. We'll take your questions now and please feel free to ask us anything. Yeah. In the back there.
Related to your suspect, your theory, did she go to church?
Oh, good question. I don't think so. Missy and her had close mutual friends, but the suspect claims that she didn't know Missy, but there's evidence that that's not true. Still not clear on the motive, but jealousy, crazy stuff maybe might be the motivation. We just haven't been able to clear that part of it up.
Real quick one.
Sure.
If the guy was so big, this guy,
Yeah.
Right.
How did it doesn't give me much faith in the case. I mean, why would they for more than 5 minutes?
I know. So just to repeat the question, because we won't have mics for the listening audience right now. So the first question was, what did the female suspect have a connection to the church? So unknown, that if she has
Not
a connection to the church, we're not aware of it. And then the other question was, if Bobby Wayne Henry was 6'1" and the forensic analysis of the video said the suspect was 5'2" to 5'7", why did they even serve a search warrant on him? I think it's because they don't have that much confidence in their forensic analysis of the video, because if they did, it would rule him out, right? So to me, the fact that they went as far as they did makes it questionable in my mind what we can really, I don't have the skills or the tools to do that. I don't know how to recreate, I guess if you got inside the building and you measured the height of the doorways and, all those types of things, and obviously law enforcement has access to do that. But the fact that they continued to investigate Bobby Wayne Henry as much as they did is surprising, considering how readily available his height is. That's one of the basic things you get when you book somebody in on their mugshot.
And that was a very thorough search warrant.
Yeah.
They took his electronics, they took his car, they went through his whole house. And I think the reason they might have leaned on him more than they needed to, or than they should have probably, is because some of the tips came from people really close to him and people that worked with him. So they had law enforcement officers in other jurisdictions saying, I think it's him on the video. So I guess they probably felt more obligated to take it seriously than maybe if it was just coming from someone else. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's a good point. I think anytime you have fellow law enforcement being like, "Hey, check this guy out. I worked with him, and I'm suspicious." That's something you're going to look into. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest reasons that he was considered in the beginning is because the very first height they had was 6 foot.
Oh.
So I think that's the reason he was considered in the beginning, and then it at some point changed to 5'2" to 5'7", and then it went to 5'2" to 5'8", plus or minus 5/8 of an inch.
Oh my goodness.
So when it was 6 foot, it was him.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess it's one of those things where you have so many experts and they all give their own opinion, and you kind of throw a dart and decide which one to believe. If you've ever attended a criminal trial and you hear expert witnesses, you'll have dueling experts. One will tell you that it absolutely, the sky is blue, and the other one will come on and say, no, it's chartreuse, and they'll both convince you. So it's very interesting how that can work. Thank you. Other questions?
I'm kind of OD all this last week.
Thank you.
And so I've heard all the details about it. And at the same person
Interesting.
and with all the other clues that y'all talked about. Why has there been press charges?
I've often wondered, for them to go after Bobby Wayne Henry as hard as they did, why haven't they even done any search warrants on that? That's a great question. Yeah. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate it.
The local people can't say, "Oh, we want a murdering person off the street," but they're not here anymore anyways.
Yeah.
So what? And it doesn't sound like Brandon or his family down the doors sound like they buy it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it take to turn them around?
And Missy's mom living so far away, in Jacksboro, and, being an older lady. I mean, she's not out there in front of the media here locally. It is interesting how there doesn't seem like there's a lot of push from the family, like you were saying.
That's kind of why we started what we did, was to keep it in the public eye, because it seemed like it was starting to die down. And we thought, we know a lot about it. We've been researching it for, what was it at the time, 4 years we started it. And we just decided to help keep everybody apprised of it, keep it out there, and then hopefully have people coming forward with tips, information. We did the billboard, just all the different things.
And cold cases really are solved every day. There's cases that are solved through DNA, through other, technologies that advance, and something that was a sample that wasn't usable, identifiable, becomes the key evidence that is able to convict someone. I mean, we've seen genealogy, people's family trees, being used in these cases that were once thought unsolvable. So I have all the hope in the world that one day this case will be solved, and the fact that people still talk about it and keep it in the public eye, that has so much value. It really has a lot of currency in keeping the case fresh. In law enforcement, they watch the news too, y'all. Whenever people are talking about this unsolved case, cops don't like unsolved cases. They want to clear them, and this really does contribute to the efforts and the attention to go after this case again. And there's always new cases filling up. There's always, a more recent case to solve, but the cold cases, they really tug at people's heartstrings, because you think about how long that family's been waiting for answers and justice. And it's not supposed to be this way, right? Justice delayed is justice denied. So people really latch on to cases like this, rightfully so. All right, he's got another question back there.
Well, maybe you could shed some light. I'm very, very perplexed
Yeah.
about the uncertainty, because looking at this video, it feels like if you know where the cameras are, it feels like this is not that hard. Recreate it, and you know the height, with the angles.
And get an exact height. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I can't believe that they 6 foot, 5 foot, 5 foot, 5
Yeah.
feet. I mean, I think that they would have it within the, I think Within the 8 to 10.
Right.
I would think it'd be a plus or minus to that.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
would think. You really would think that they would narrow that down.
Well, and the first time Renae and I walked into the church, we went to that Dutch door that the perpetrator's opening right there. And I had Renae stand in front of it and I took a picture of her. That Renae is 5'2.5". And that Dutch door hit her about the same exact place as it hits the perpetrator. So that's not a big person.
And they're wearing a helmet
it's
too.
not a tall person.
So you think about the helmet, giving a couple inches really.
Yeah. Because
yeah.
like, see where it hits the perpetrator? That's right. That's right where it hit Renae.
So how much confidence are you supposed to have in the people that initiate?
Yeah.
No, I
know.
get it.
Confused too.
Yeah.
Carter?
I think that leads in one of all the bizarre parts of this case. I think one of the ones that has not been talked about tonight is the behavior of the Midlothian. And I know that it's no secret that you guys have had some communication based on the nature of your investigation with the Midlothian Police Department. What are your impressions of kind of what is going through their mind, what is going through their investigation, and what can you talk about the nature of the conversations you've had?
I know we'll both want to answer this. I'll just say real quick before I give it back to Renae is that there's a sharp contrast in the way they handled the search warrants and the information to the public at the beginning. Those first couple months, they released all the search warrants through the media to the public. Everybody knew everything. Not long after that, they shut down the public. They had a guy, Kevin Johnson, who was the assistant chief of police. He also was the liaison to the media and the public. When he left, they didn't replace that role. They stopped talking to everyone. So it's just been dead silent. I'm sure you've all noticed, you're locals. Yep. So there hasn't been anything. Did you have a question?
I actually had two. One, when it came to the psychiatrist, did they say anything about the flat-footed in any way with their ankle? How that's how I, as a flat-footed person, walks, but also how a lot of flat. Have they said anything about perpetrator being?
I didn't hear anything about that.
From what I remember from the actual forensic report that the podiatrist put out that was released by law enforcement, they felt like the way the person was walking was the clearest indication, like that they would be able to analyze once they had a suspect. They would be able to analyze that person's gait and see if it matched because it was so peculiar. I think an issue with being flat-footed is that's not like something that's on your driver's license. It's not something where they can say like, take off your shoes and let us look at your feet. But they can get video of someone walking, right? You can start surveilling someone. You can see them walking down the street. You can have them walk into the police department should they agree to be questioned. And guess what? You're always being videotaped in a police department and they're watching that video in the lobby. And, if you come in to make a report, you're on camera. And so I know that they were analyzing lots of video of people of interest and just of areas, around Midlothian where they had access to cameras to see if people were walking in that way. It's interesting. The idea of being flat-footed could be related. I definitely think that has merit. So
I would like to add one thing about the gate. Police said, and you might remember, she's really good at remembering time frames. But at one point, the police said, probably 2 or 3 years ago, that they believed that the gate might have been temporary. And I kind of took it as that might have been either something that could have possibly been an injury, or it could also been maybe shoes that were too big, and that's why it was considered temporary because they don't always have those shoes on.
Or post-surgical.
Different things that it could have been. But I thought that was interesting. It was a couple of years ago that they said they believe now that this gate was temporary. So
confused.
Going back to the question about law enforcement and why Midlothian Police Department started being so tight-lipped, my theory on that is that the Texas Rangers got involved because they really do not talk to the media. They don't like to make information available. I have a show out now on HBO Max called Killer Confessions: Case Files of a Texas Ranger. And it's with a retired Texas Ranger because they would not give permission for any active Texas Rangers to do a show like that. So that's always kind of where I've leaned, that these, this other agency kind of took over and was advising them to no longer communicate with the public so much. But yeah, one day we'll hopefully get this document dump that we've all been waiting for to see what they've been up to for the past like 8.5 years since we've had some good information. But yes, right in front.
A kind of a comment. I am firmly in targeted camp for a couple of reasons. Number one, I remember it from day one, watching it on the news. Midlothian police never warned the don't run the loose, hide, protect yourself. The other thing, I've worked in churches for 30 plus. Nothing to see. My church is always off on the Friday, not Monday.
Okay.
But every church I've been in, offering either goes directly to the bank or it goes in a safe that open. Most staff don't even know where that safe is. A burglar wouldn't. A burglar wants to get in and get out if they can. And they took.
Yeah.
So I know.
And we're
They
in
had
no
half an
hurry.
hour.
Yeah.
Not in a
They
hurry.
had half an hour to start working on that. You're right. Yeah, that's crazy. And you don't really see them really doing anything.
Yeah, they're not wandering around. So
Mhm.
I agree with Renee that they were communicating with. Lady here.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. You're my peripheral vision here. So yes, go ahead.
I haven't heard much about the weapon. Was that
Yeah.
brought in, or was it? Did they get it at the church?
Okay, great question. So this has been something that they held close to the vest for a very long time. Renae looks like Crystal looks like she's itching to talk about it. So I'll let her go.
Burst.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the reason one of the many reasons I'm in the targeted camp is because that perpetrator had a loaded gun on them. How many times have you gone to go goof around someone and had a gun ready to shoot someone? I mean, maybe some people, but it just makes it less likely to me that they were just there to do something like maybe look for some money or maybe just a lot of people think that person was just there just to hang out, and because if they wanted to, like Cheryl McCollum was on our show, if you listen to that episode, and she said she's watched thousands of hours of surveillance video. And like you were saying, the thieves get in and out. And if they wanted to destroy the church, they would be doing that very quickly as well. They'd be turning on the plumbing. They'd be trying to do whatever they can to destroy it, maybe set a fire or something, tearing things up, ripping things down, breaking glass. They just weren't doing any of that. And they had a good half hour.
What did she say? The only things they destroyed was the door and Missy.
Right.
That's what she
That
said.
was it. Yeah.
So
Sadly.
it was a gun. I'm that.
Yeah, you're exactly. There was a gun. And the police kept that quiet for a while. We did as well because we could tell they didn't want that out, but it got out. And some people in the media had released it. Some YouTubers had released it. So then we felt like it was okay for us to talk about it after it was sort of spread around a little bit. We didn't want to be the ones that let it out. But once it was out, we went ahead and started discussing it. And there was a gun. It has not been found that we're aware of yet. And there were bullets, they have an idea of what type of gun it was and all that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, that Missy was shot, and we are always led to believe she was bludgeoned because the police said puncture wounds to the head and chest. But I guess technically a bullet's a puncture wound, so hard to say.
And that's why the ATF was there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really creepy. And Claire brought some really good footage here because the part where you can see the perpetrator, it's not this part, but we'll see it in a minute, walking around, you can see the hammer. It's so eerie. And at the time I noticed that hammer, I thought that was the murder weapon. We don't know if she was also bludgeoned or just shot. We really don't know.
They haven't released much evidence about, for good reason, about the actual condition of her body. So everyone's analyzing what they did say, like Crystal quoted, the puncture wounds and the idea that she was violently killed is not in dispute, but the actual mode and mechanism and how many potential, means were used, that's something we don't know. But we do know, yes, that a gun was there and a hammer was there. So it's a very gruesome crime scene.
For the people that were curious of how to because some people were like, well, I don't necessarily believe that for whatever reason. It's actually listed on murderdata.org, which is it is a database that they use to basically get information about crimes in the area. Their data that they pull for each city, county, throughout United States, and it actually mentions that there was a 45-year-old woman in 2016 in Ellis County that died by handgun.
We know that's Missy, right? I mean, there was no one else that was shot that day or even that week.
So, okay, let's pick up your question and we'll make our way back around the room. Yeah.
Okay, so you said, who are they bringing in?
So it's my understanding they're bringing in everyone that has been spoken to before to have new interviews. And I'm sure they're also reaching out to new people as they expand their, circle investigation. Like as you start any crime investigation, you start with the people closest to the victim. And once you eliminate them or you don't get any usable information from them, you draw a bigger circle and then a bigger circle and a bigger circle and a bigger circle until hopefully you find the person who's responsible. The idea is that you eliminate those closest first because statistically they're the most likely to have killed you. I always tell people, they're like, how do you sleep at night when you do this for a living? And what I usually say is, if you're not afraid of the person sleeping next to you, you're probably going to be all right. Because that's like 85, 90% of crimes is your intimate partner, right? But there's exceptions to every rule. And once you rule out the people closest to you, you have to look at people further and further away in these other circles. I mean, there's a case that was just solved in Des Moines, Iowa. It was a realtor who was killed. Do you know the case that I'm talking about, right? Yes. So Ashley Oakland was killed in a model townhome in Des Moines, Iowa. And this case went unsolved for like 15 years. And it was just solved. And there's a woman arrested. Of course, I thought of Missy Bevers' case because everyone thought that she would have been shot and killed by a man. But they've arrested a woman who worked in the same realty company. They've not revealed the connection, why, she had a motive to kill her. But this is someone who was not in the closest circle, to the victim and was not a man. And eventually they got to this woman. And this case went on for a really long time. It was in their cold case unit. And one of the things that the police there in Iowa credited with solving it is they created this deck of cards. Have you seen this in cases before? So in different states, law enforcement will create a deck of cards, 52 cards in a deck, and every card will have a unsolved case on it. A missing person, an unsolved murder, and it'll have the details, the date, a photo of the victim, anything that they have on it, a case number, and a tip number, and a reward. And they hand out these decks of cards in prisons, on shady street corners. They hand them out to people they think might know something about a murder. So I've had decks given to me. What does that say about me, right? But I've had decks given to me by detectives and other people in other states. And they're like, hey, look through this deck. If you think you know anything, let me know, And so it's something where people play cards with these decks and people talk, right? And so while we don't know all the details yet in the Ashley Oakland case, it's one of those that was a real head scratcher. And people thought that it might never be solved. And a year after they released this deck of cards, there's an arrest and a first degree murder charge. So maybe they need to release a deck of cards in Midlothian, right?
We actually did.
Yeah.
They made Crime Stoppers actually did it.
Okay.
In this, what I was actually, are they going to bring in like rangers or?
As far as I know, the Rangers are involved. Yeah. That they are like heading the investigation. Yeah. So that always gives you more confidence,
Our natural causes. He had cancer, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Our understanding is it's a Texas Ranger and the lead investigator from the Missy Bevers case, and then I'm assuming other people helping within the department.
Yeah.
But that was what we got, what we heard from our intel.
Right there now.
Yes.
What are they doing to the door now?
Pretending.
To the lock? Beating it with a hammer?
My opinion is they're just doing that for show, because I'm not a thief. I'm not, but I can guarantee you, if I wanted to get in that door, I would have got in it.
Right.
They're not putting any effort into it. That's just my opinion. That's what I see on the camera, on the video. They're just doing it for show.
Kind of
Because that's not
looks like they're just playing around.
That's
yeah.
actually a closet, because we've been in the church before. It's like a utility closet, and it wouldn't be hard to get in that door at all.
Another question I have is, have you brought in any of the retired?
Not that I'm aware of, but that is a good idea. A lot of times retired detectives, they got a lot of skills and a lot of time on their hands. So they're great people to bring into new investigations. So I'm sure if there were willing retired detectives that volunteered, their time or were willing to come out of retirement and work on a consultant basis, I'm sure they would be.
Midlothian Police has been very I don't know what the word is, just not inviting to outside help. They've sent away private investigators. Unsolved Mysteries contacted us to do an episode. This was about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were barreling down the road to having a really good episode on Missy. And it requires the police to participate or they won't do the episode. And that's where it fell apart. So, they're trying to keep that investigation the way they want it.
Yeah.
They're not wanting outside people, I guess, to come in uninvited.
Yeah.
To have Unsolved Mysteries on a case is absolutely like a dream come true, if you want to say that, for a cold case investigation, because they don't just cover it, they try to solve it. That's literally their goal.
Yeah.
So for them to not do it was pretty devastating for us.
We're really disappointed.
Yeah.
At this point, when I understand not letting Unsolved Mysteries come in like in year 2, right? But here we are coming up on 10 years. I think we're all hoping for some type of announcement or news from the Midlothian Police Department, at least an acknowledgement, right? 10 years out. For many anniversaries, they did. They would release something. They would ask for tips. Yeah. So,
and I want to make this clear. We want to support the police. We don't mean to dog them in any way, but it was just shocking to us that they couldn't get that cooperation. And we heard from private investigators that were hired by people close to Missy that were told to go away. So, we just hear enough of that. We just think, they must really want to pick and choose the way they want to do it.
Yeah.
But we don't really understand, of course, the inner workings of those things. We just know what has been rejected.
Got a question there?
Yes, we used to talk to members of the family and they had theories that were kind of in alignment with a lot of ours, but we don't know what's going on right now with their theories.
I think everybody has theories, right? Everyone has their suspect. I've heard from, ex-law enforcement, people involved with Midlothian PD, oh, don't worry, the killer's dead. Y'all heard that one yet? Committed suicide in prison. I can't tell you who, but don't worry, they're dead. And I'm like, that is just no help at all, right? But everybody does have a theory that they've, come up with and kind of lets them have, like, it makes sense to them, right? It gives them a certain measure of peace, if you can say that, just to think, well, this is how I can't prove it. They haven't been arrested, but this is how I think it played out. And so, yeah, I think everybody has a theory. Yeah.
Departments with collaboration, university, forensic science departments, with graduating students. Do y'all have hope that maybe in the future, this case, and along with all thanks to the collaboration between departments, graduating?
Yeah, great question. So she was asking if we think that cold cases could be solved by greater collaboration with forensic science students and police departments. Absolutely. We've seen that happen. Arlington Police Department, worked with UTA. They opened up the books on their case. An entire class, spent a semester digging through a case. I think that's a great way to get fresh eyes on a cold case. The issue there is the police have to invite you in. They have to be willing to share everything, and it has to be something that is a full collaboration, or else you can't investigate half of a murder, right? So that really just requires that level of cooperation that can be rare among police departments. But
and then my follow-up question: announcement of collaborations with Dallas Police Department, other universities. How many cold cases? Oh, they department actually cooperating with.
Yeah, I mean, potentially you could solve, one or two a year if you had this case that was the full focus of these classes. And I mean, be hard to imagine someone batting 1,000 and always solving a case. But if you had enough universities researching, different cases or even the same cases, it would give you a greater chance of getting a case solved. So I do think that's a very promising new avenue for people to look at cold cases.
Well, I mean, earlier the question was brought up as to why all the investigating into Bobby Wayne Henry, if his stature clearly shows. I mean, he could not have been the one to do it. I mean, could he have had any involvement? I mean, he's a crooked cop. He's been in the community a long time. And if anybody had access to tactical gear they could just give out, I mean, a full outfit, totally fitted, it'd be him. I think as a quick follow-up, as we could see the behavior of the perpetrator, I mean, you had mentioned, Crystal, it just being, maybe they're amping themselves up, that explains his behavior. But the longer I look at it, the more, I mean, just randomly opening and closing doors does not seem to be in any hurry. I think the word manic really applies to this. Do you think there could be any kind of drug use or anything?
I do see it as nervous energy. Yeah, because I do. Because it's just sort of senselessly.
I would hope there's some drug use involved, like just to sleep better at night, just knowing this person's that messed up. I'd like to think some pharmaceuticals helped just, well, it's so disturbing.
If this person did meth and stuff like that, that would explain why they're so wide awake in the church in the middle of the night. And
but meth user pretty skinny. This is it's a wide girth for meth. If they're on meth, they're new to meth. All right. Yeah.
Fair point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've heard rumors that people associated with the person I think probably did it. There was that type of lifestyle going on around this person, so it's possible.
There's plenty of drugs that would allow you to be more relaxed, more cool and calm, collected. Yeah.
That's a good one.
We can do a couple more questions. I don't want to keep you guys too late, but right here.
One quick question. How this
Very
Great
good
question.
Yeah.
At the very first press conference on the day of the murder, Captain Spann said that they have footage of the perpetrator going down a hallway, presumably to leave the way he or she came in. But that's never been discussed again.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about a dark Explorer, like they thought was like brown or blue, like a Ford Explorer.
Dark SUV.
Dark SUV. And of course, Bobby Wayne Henry drove a dark SUV. Of course he did, right?
Of course he did.
I mean, a lot of people do, but still. But that was all that I had heard. It was not the Nissan Altima, but there was this dark SUV that was seen exiting the parking lot before members arrived for the class. And so they had ruled it out as being related to Camp Gladiator. But yeah, we've never gotten any more information on possible getaway car.
And the police have been very tight-lipped. And, as you know, because you live here in the community and you probably wish you knew more about this case.
Yeah.
We respect police being tight-lipped. And anytime we get something that really looks like a tip, we always give it straight to them. We know our limitations, and we're not dumb enough to think we're going to solve this.
Right. I always tell people I don't carry cuffs. I can't put anybody away. I got to give it to the cops.
Yeah. So we want to support the Midlothian police in any way we can, and by having this podcast, we do occasionally get what sounds like a pretty good tip. So we always connect them with the police immediately.
Corey.
I'm sorry. I'm trying not to ask a million questions. When it rains, like when Camp Gladiator has to, she's outside typically, right?
Right.
So who does she call to say, hey, I got to come inside today? Like, does she just have a key to the church?
Great question. Yeah, she had a key. I guess the key was just so she could have her campers, they call the participants campers, her class members, and so that they could use the restrooms.
Okay.
And so I think that it's an outdoor, Camp Gladiator is an outdoor exercise program, parking lots.
Yeah.
But she did have classes occasionally if the weather was really bad. She would do it inside.
Okay.
Y'all gonna do something on the anniversary?
Yes.
Yeah, tell them about it.
Do you want to tell about it?
On what?
The anniversary. Are we doing anything for that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so the anniversary is on April 18th, of course. 2026 will be 10 years, but that is on a Saturday. So the best day, according to media, is to do it Monday through Thursday. So we're going to do it on the 16th, April 16th. It's going to be at Heritage Park from 4 to 7 p.m. We're going to be doing a live podcast. We're going to be giving out bracelets, flyers. We're going to have signs, banners, things like that. And we would love for everybody, as many people as we can get to come as possible, because it really shows how important this case is to be solved. It shows support. I mean, just everything. And people, we usually do have somebody that comes in and gives us their version of what happened, or maybe some tips. We had one last time that was literally recorded on video
The media.
while we were there.
Right.
So
Well, thank you so much for coming, and I'm happy to talk with you afterwards. I'm sure Crystal and Renae have a little bit of time, and I'll sign books for people, and we're just so grateful that you came. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.